Hello, ladies, and welcome back. This is Moni Millares, and we are in Celebrate You, the podcast, personal development for the career and entrepreneurial woman. Wah!
Woohoo!
So, woohoo! Today we have a special guest, and we have Jonas Chelbat. So, before I go into Jonas, hi, Jonas. How are
Hi
you
everyone.
today?
Hi Monica.
Thank you so much for being in the show and taking the time.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
So just for everyone to know, Jonas and I, we met here in KL. Now he's in Denmark, but it's a long story. But we met in meditation class with his wife. This was like months ago. We go to what's called like sound meditation, sound bath or gong meditation, and we met there. Then I've been to their wedding as well. They've been to my place like for lunch. So like we've been like friends basically, but I was telling him, yeah, I was
Nice.
telling him just now that it's like I've never asked him all these questions about his entrepreneurial journey. So
There you go.
today is the day. Um,
There we go.
so just to introduce you a little bit to Jonas, exactly, he's originally from Denmark, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. But he's got like a long history on entrepreneurship as such. I assumed it was just his latest venture, but now I was like stalking him on LinkedIn and I was like, oh wow, like he goes like long time ago in the journey. So there's many juicy things that we can learn from him. So Jonas, thank you so much and over to you.
Sure.
Probably we'll start with the basics. Like, can you tell us a little bit about like who you are, basically?
Right. Sure. So Jonas, I'm from a city called Copenhagen, which is the capital of Denmark. Yeah, I've lived a few different places around the world. Had I think an interesting journey in being involved in building some interesting companies. And yeah, outside of that, I'm a married man. Yeah, hope that was an intro.
Yes, it is.
Nice.
Um, okay, so I guess like my first question to you is, how did you get into entrepreneurship as such?
Sure,
How
sure.
did you decide I'm going to start something?
Right. So I used to have a job where I was part of building internet companies for other people for a large kind of fund, um, and have been doing that for them in a few different places around the world. And yeah, eventually I kind of stood in a situation where either I would continue down that path and continue, or I would go do it for myself. And inevitably I ended up uh, taking the door of myself. So yeah,
Congrats. It's
thanks.
kind of a brave move,
Yeah,
actually.
it's been a roller coaster, but an exciting one.
Awesome. And just like following that train of thought, as in a roller coaster and bravery, one of the things that people challenge, well, one of the things that goes through people's minds when they are exactly in that situation that it's like, I have a job, but I am considering, like starting a business or just making the jump into proper entrepreneurial journey.
Sure.
People fear that because, well, it is scary, right? There's the
Right.
statistics of companies fail within like 1 year, 5 years, and then all the stories that we hear about like stressed entrepreneurs and not knowing where the next paycheck is coming from. Well, when you have a job, you have like the consistency of a paycheck. Therefore,
Sure.
that keeps people like stuck in their job, even though you may not be that passionate about it.
Right. It's
What was
comfortable.
going on in your mind, like that made you push through those fears and take the
Well,
plunge?
right. I mean, I think so. My situation was a little bit unique. So first of all, I'd been part of some teams where I was part of building some interesting internet companies. Yeah, these companies were kind of rapid scale. They were huge budgets, so hundreds of millions of euros, and so not your typical entrepreneurial journey. just basically building companies with a massive budget. I would nearly want to say a license to kill. I mean, it was kind of the Wild West where just test everything, do everything as long as it works, and evaluate it and let us scale it or drop it. Um, and so having done that in rapid speed, it was exciting. And while doing that, I was of course was in a comfortable situation. I received a good salary, and had most expenses paid for, and so forth. So there was not much risk there. Obviously, taking the step out to say, should I do it for myself or not, was a little bit of a mixture of my circumstance at the time, and then kind of a stoic approach towards it's either now or I'm just going to be doing it later, and you know, the sooner, the less risk, the less personal responsibility, and so forth. Um, that was a long answer for yeah, for
No,
sure.
no, that is cool. I was just thinking about it, like exactly, like the sooner the better, probably.
Right.
You were very young when you started, because like right now
31.
you're very young.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
31.
exactly, yeah. So I'm like, when did you start? You were like in your early 20s.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I had an early start. I think I'm quite privileged that I come from I come from Copenhagen, Denmark. We at least in my impression, we start school a little bit earlier, finish a little bit earlier. I had finished a bit earlier, so I was privileged in that sense. And yeah, and then I kind of jumped out on my journey. So I was young. I didn't feel young. I was arrogantly old in my mind. That's changed, but I was in the mindset of being Superman when I ventured on that journey.
Amazing. Somehow I do believe that you need to be in the mindset of Superman to
Right.
adventure, or
Sure.
Superwoman. You're like,
Sure.
yes, we can. It's a mixture of Superwoman, Superman mindset, and the other one, it's kind of ignorance, right?
Right. Right.
Because
I'm,
you don't
I mean,
know.
I've had this debate with a couple of friends, and we've always, we're always kind of debating back and forth between, are you in a better situation? Who is set up most to succeed? The person in their mid 30s who has, a depth of experience and is a bit more wiser and so forth, or the young kind of less experienced, more inexperienced kind of hungry gun. And every time I feel we come to the same conclusion, which is when you are younger and less experienced, you have that as a negative. But one of the benefits or one of the positives you do have is you have the ability to work. So I mean, looking at me, I could run 16-hour days, and when I say 16 hours, I mean with intensity, no lunch breaks, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
I could work 6 7 days a week with heavy, things that I just simply cannot do today in the same right of mind. And so we're always ping ponging back and forth, and I think the ultimate conclusion we always arrive at is, if you're building a company with a lot of funding or a lot of money where you can hire people, then you're definitely better set up with more experience being in your mid 30s. But if you are kind of low funded, a lot of it is grinding, and you gotta be the secretary, you gotta be the CEO, you gotta be the sales guy, you gotta be the
Yes.
whole the whole row. That 20 something year old, yeah, 7 out of 10 times simply just wins. That's my
Yes.
biased conclusion.
Yeah. When you ask the question, yeah, I definitely was. Yeah, the hunger to hunger,
Right.
hunger to whatever drives you,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think when you do it with when you have a lot of money, you have the ability to hire a lot of smart people, and then it's more about guiding them in the right direction and setting the right frameworks for them to succeed, and measuring them upon that success. But obviously, if
Hmm.
you don't have a lot of money, you need to pull a lot of threads yourself, and that's hours and hours and hours.
Exactly.
So
Awesome.
nice. Cool.
So what what drives you? Because like entrepreneurship, just like you were saying, it's not easy. As in, you have to, even if it's a well-funded company, like sometimes you have to do like very long hours, uh, use multiple hats, learn new things, and when it sometimes it does get tough, and you're like, ugh. And I find that in those moments, like reconnecting to what's important to you and what drives you, it's what keeps you pushing.
Right.
Otherwise, it's
Right.
easy to just like give up.
Sure.
That's my perspective. What's been driving you like
Right. Yeah.
all these
Um,
years?
right. So I think when I was younger, I was less conscious of it. I thought I would I think I would tell myself that I was conscious of it, or I knew what it was, but as I've gotten a bit older, I think at least I'm more conscious of it. So there's ultimately two things that really make me continue and make me enjoy this journey, which I think is the most important part. Um, the first is I like solving problems, right? Um,
Mm,
I think like you could put me in a factory that produced ball bearings, and and I would find it's probably one of the most boring things in the world you could do. I think I would find an extreme amount of interesting things that you could optimize and work on and solve and improve and create and so forth. So I think that's the first. Um, the second is I'm extremely, I guess I wouldn't say driven, but at least energized by working with really smart people. Um,
yes.
I'm extremely blessed today that I have a business partner in the current company I run, and I'm extremely blessed that for the last many years I've been the one kind of heavily involved when it comes to our product side of things, and having that privilege, I get to work with some really incredible engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether it's project management, product management, design, whether it's coding, these are just people who, at least in our team, are highly intelligent. They are extremely interesting. Um, yeah, um, just admiring people, and that kind of um makes me want to wake up every day and spend time with them. It's kind of like being a football player, and one thing is you love the sport, right? Another thing is you love who you play with. Um,
Yeah.
and I just love playing with top performers and people who also are excited about learning and growing and improving. So
Yes. And I think that's such an important point. Like for me too, it's like it is very, very important who you're working with,
yeah,
because it's like you're building a company. Like when I joined my first fintech, one of the actually the first employee slash co-founder, Ruth, she was like, well, when I met Ricky, the founder, she was like, I interviewed him like so much because this is like a marriage, almost,
right,
like you have
right,
to go through so many things together. And
sure,
it's like the ups
sure,
and the downs, and you're building something together. So the team to me is like so important when
right, right,
building something.
right, yeah,
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah. So what I it's like I was talking you on your LinkedIn page, like your current company, Umai.
Mhm,
Basically, it's a software company for restaurants, and you're improving kind of the journey, the end-to-end journey for both the people, the restaurant owners, and the customers as such.
sure,
And then there's a video in your LinkedIn page that it somebody asked you something around the lines of how did you get started,
all right,
and you tell a very interesting story about hiring your first uh, developer, basically engineer.
okay, right. I've
So my
go on.
Yeah. So what I wanted to understand, it's more like your mindset around the practical sides of getting started, because like you've not only started like a company once, but like you've gone through a journey of starting companies like multiple times.
Sure,
So there must be something in you that it's like, for example, and I would love you to expand on the story on how you hired the first developer.
sure.
But it's like there's something behind that mindset that even I was like, oh, of course, that's so smart.
Mm,
Like
right, right.
that's a good way to do it.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, a bit of background. So I think what you don't find on my profile is that I started another company, which I think I owned it well, right up until the Corona crisis started. So first thing I did before I started, my first venture on my own, was I created an event company. Um, I realized, I had money in the bank at the time, but at the same time, I also realized that having money in the bank is basically having a clock that's just ticking, right? And so I have the
Yep.
ability to go out and raise more money from others, which would mean I give percentages of ownership and all this kind of stuff up. But I wanted to explore if I had the ability to first create a cash flow machine that could fund, trial and error of the project I was about to venture into. And so I created Malaysia or Kuala Lumpur's first pub crawl, yeah, which is basically a bar tour.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. I got it set up within, I think it took me 5 days of work, literally. Um, and became basically a pretty good cash generator. I think I ran it for roughly a year. It cost me two days of the week where I ran that on the side. And then I basically hired someone and kind of managed it, outsourced it, and owned it for a good number of, oh, what are we talking? 8 years, something like that. And,
Oh
and more or
wow.
less, yeah, yeah. Just ran in the background and kind of paid some bills. but but of course that kind of died with the whole Corona crisis. So that was that first. Your specific question was then, how did I get started with the current venture, and how, what was the mindset of getting the first engineer on board? All right. So
Yep.
yeah, um, that's an interesting story. We realized that, what we're going to be building is a technology company, and so the most important thing is that we can control the creational process, right? So we wanted to avoid the pitfall of going out and hiring some agency or some external engineers that build it for us, and they just hand it off, and then 6 months later we realize all the issues in the code and all those other things, right? And I don't want to get too
Yep.
technical for the people who are not deep in this field, but you know, wisdom words here. Don't do that.
Mhm.
Get your
I
get your
agree
own
with you.
guys.
I agree with
Get,
you.
right. Get your own guys in house who have the same long term interest as you, and don't just want to build some quick code and hand it off to you and get a paycheck. But guys who are going to be stuck with the shit they build 6 months later, 12 months later. That's my advice. But yeah, I mean, we my background was in finance and a bunch of operational stuff and marketing and whatnot, and had less of a technical background. So coding and building software architecture and all that stuff, even building a technical team was so foreign to me. And so I realized, okay, I can sit down for X amount of hours and I can recruit people and I can tell a great story and I can get people excited, right? Um, but I need somebody to find or build this for me, right? And so
Yep.
we went out, we started recruiting, and we did that with an aggressive mindset. Um, so it was 15, 16 hour days finding people. We actually found someone, I think it was, we're talking 5 or maybe 3 days, or I mean, don't quote me on the numbers here, but it was very short from when we started. We were very blessed. Um, we then also realized after we spoke with this person, how in God's name do we ensure that this person can code and are not just talking a good story, right? So we needed somebody to vet them, and that meant, holy crap, we need somebody to go and test them, right? Technically, and
Yep.
um, and so we sat for the whole day on LinkedIn. I think we started in the early morning, and I think I went home from the office at maybe 1 a.m., something like that. Got a phone call
Wow.
around, yeah, got a phone call around, probably it was like 5 minutes to two, from one of my colleagues who said, Jonas, I found a guy. He's a CTO for a company in Germany. He has 200 engineers working for him. Um, he's ready to have a chat. Let's speak with him now. And we were bootstrapped, and we had our own cash involved and all that stuff. I jump on a call with him now, basically right after he spoke with my colleague.
Like,
I
yeah.
tell him what we're doing and what we're looking to do, and we're passionate and all that stuff. And I explain, we basically don't want to get, or don't want to make a big mistake. So we need somebody to help us vet that this person is right. And we explain we don't have any cash, and yeah, and this guy, I mean, God bless his soul. I believe he felt our passion, and yeah. He basically said, "I will do it for free."
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So he helped us out and interviewed a lot of candidates. And finally he recommended us one candidate who we ended up moving forward with. Which yeah, I'm going to mention his name. His name is Abhishek. He's an incredible engineer. And yeah, Abhishek joined us, and then the journey went on from there.
Amazing.
All right.
So, what do you think about? Because I've had this debate with people like in the past few years.
Sure.
There's some people that believe that to have someone, let's say, like in this case, help you out for free is almost impossible. I believe that people help you out because A, they are kind, and B, they are passionate about this and they want to get involved as well.
Right.
What's been your experience about people kind of volunteering their work for free,
Right. Right.
let's
Yeah.
say,
Great question.
helping you out?
Yeah, I mean, so I think a lot of people have helped us out. Also, have helped me out personally in my own career. I think uh, who wants to help and what they want to help with and when they want to help, differs from person to person. So the why differs. I think there's different variables that impact that why. So this could be variables like how experienced are they? If they have 15 years of experience, it's very different than maybe someone who just came out of school and is a bit more hungry and
Mm-hmm.
eager. How many other things do they have landing on their plates? Yeah. So if you're speaking with a 60-year-old guy who's on the board of 10 different companies, he might be willing to help a little bit less, or at least
Yes.
supply a bit less of his time or her time than someone else. So I think it really varies from person to person. But some people do it because they're just amazing, and their heart is in a good place, and they just like to pay it forward, right? Some
Yeah.
people have received a lot of help, and they just want to give back. I'm genuinely one of those people. Um, some people realize that if I help now, then maybe also the future there might something interesting come out of this project, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I could get involved. You know, some people believe in karma. I think there's various reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an I'm like, that's an amazing answer. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Building on top of that, I
Mhm.
think, well, you and I share kind of, um, I don't know if it's a belief or just like a passion or something, that it's kind of personal growth. And like sometimes we've had conversations about like mentors and like people
Right.
that we
Right.
follow. Uh, how have you found your mentors and who has helped you out? How do you approach that topic and who do you learn from and how do you bounce your energy
Sure.
with
Sure.
other people?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so I've had many mentors throughout life. I guess there's been less of a formal element in it, and um, and it's just been more natural. I've always been a person who seeked growth or sought out growth, and I think people who are in the same mindset also always are excited to help a younger version of themselves, or a young person who's hungry and interested in growing. And so I've had various ones. My sister's ex-husband, I think, was kind of the first person who really uh, help my mindset. So I'm from a
Mm,
little bit of a rough. I guess now it's not very much of a rough area. It's kind of I guess a little bit more influential area now. But when I was younger, it was a bit of a rough area where I grew up, in Copenhagen, and a lot of the people from this area become cooks, or they become carpenters or
mm,
painters or electricians or whatnot. And it's less common that people go to university and enter business and whatnot. And so he was really, I'm half Icelandic, and he's from Iceland, and I would see him one to two times a year, and he would always put in my head, when he would take me to nice restaurants or things like this, he would always mention this. He would say when the bill came, I was a kid, right? But when the bill came, he would always ask me, Jonas, do you know how many hours you have to work behind the frying machine in McDonald's to pay for this meal? Every time.
oh
Every single,
wow.
yeah,
Oh
I mean,
wow.
so he did it in a kind way, right? But he was
Yeah.
constantly framing my mindset around these amazing things that you get to experience. Do you know how do you know how to achieve those? Do you know how to access those? Um, and he was always comparing it to the frying machine in McDonald's.
McDonald's.
Right.
Wow.
And we're talking hundreds of times. So yeah. Outside of that, I've had lots of exciting people. I used to I used to sell over the phone when I was around 15 years old. I used to call people up and sell them newspaper subscriptions. And I had some amazing managers and coaches at the time who were quite growth oriented. I actually saw Tony Robbins for the first time when I think I was 15 in Copenhagen.
Oh, you were very young.
I was young. I was extremely young, but pretty. I mean, I was very growth oriented. Um, so yeah, I met a lot of incredible people. There's a guy named Mats, who's a Danish guy who really had a heavy impact on me. He had somewhat of a similar background at the time. I was studying at high school. I was going to like an English. At the time, it was the only English speaking high school in Denmark, and it was kind of a business high school. And um, and at that time, I was selling over the phone. I was very, very interested in becoming a person who taught others to sell over the phone. And the big challenge
Mm.
I had in the current company I was in was they didn't hire younger people to train the older people. Imagine like a 16-year-old
Of course.
going and training a 31-year-old. There's just a power dynamic, and so the culture in that company was just not allowing it. But then this guy shows up at my high school, and he has this talk in front of what was in that room, 500 people, something like that. And he walks through how you can achieve A and B and C. And he'd studied at the same high school. He wasn't a top performer. He'd gone to Copenhagen Business School, had completed it very, very quickly. And then he was one of the youngest people ever to get accepted to MIT's MBA program. I think he was 23 when he
Oh,
got there.
nice.
Yeah, and he was at MIT at the time, and he was back home in Denmark and doing this talk for us at the high school. And at the final, his journey had been like he went to the high school, he was selling on the phone, then he became the guy who taught people to sell on the phone. So it's very same shoes I was in. He studied in Denmark, then went abroad to the US to study. At the time, I was very strongly considering going to either New York or Boston to study after high school, and so a lot of elements were just pinging. And interestingly enough, I was going to reach out to him. So at the end, he put up his contact details, and I figured, you know what? There's 500 people in this room. This guy's probably going to be bombarded with messages. I waited basically. I wrote down his contact details, and I waited, and I waited 6 months. And I figured, now I'm going to send him a message, because now, like, all those people, those messages would have dropped off, and now I'm sticking out of the haystack. And I sent him an email, and I think within 10 minutes, I get a reply. And the reply did not answer any of the questions I had in the email. It was a very short reply, and it just said, Jonas, why did you first write to me now? Question mark.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I reply and I say, well, actually, I wrote to you because I figured that probably 100 people would write you, and I would just kind of fall through the cracks, or at least not be noticed. So I figured it would be best to wait 6 months, so I had more of your attention span. And shortly after, he wrote me another email and said, Jonas, I'm in Copenhagen next week. Let's meet. So yeah, really cool. Um, yeah, he's a great
super
guy.
cool.
I think he showed up at my school. We had a little bit of a chat. I was kind of explaining what I wanted to do. While I was explaining that, he extremely rudely picked up the phone and made a phone call, and I was just baffled, like, wow, okay, this guy, yeah, is pretty crazy. I'm talking here, and he just like picked up the phone, and then when the guy answers the phone, I realized that he actually called his old boss, and then he basically said, last I'm with a guy, he'll be perfect for you. You should have a chat with him. So really cool.
Oh,
So
wow.
I can keep going, right? Lots of different other mentors in my life. Lots of incredible people. My business partners has had a huge impact on my mindset around being a good human being. About
Hmm.
grounding myself through meditation and various other things. My wife has had an incredible positive impact on me. Call her my mentor, or my life partner. But lots of different exciting people who taught me different things, and who teach me different things daily.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Right.
you've been
That was
blessed
long.
by so many people.
Sorry.
No, it's amazing. Like you've been blessed by having like so many people help you out since you were basically a
Sure.
kid.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've been lucky.
awesome. Yeah, the power of I do believe in the paying it forward kind of
Right.
the yeah, it does. It helping like someone very young with a little thing then results in someone like you, for example.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is cool. Um, I'm very interested to know, like, in all your years of experience, what are the top lessons? Not the top lessons in entrepreneurship, but just like lessons either entrepreneurship or life, but that you wish that somebody told you before.
Right. Yeah. Um. So professionally and personally, those are two very different things. I think I'll go with the professional part, and you just let me know if you want to hear about the personal too later. Um. There are so many lessons or so many things I wish I knew earlier. But I think um, some of the deeper or more foundational ones apply. So when I was younger, I was extremely ambitious. I had a mindset which was my way or the highway, um,
Mm,
which didn't always result in the best outcome. I had a hard time understanding how other people saw the world differently and had maybe other priorities in life. I really had one priority, which was professionally succeeding.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I wanted to play in the Champions League, and that was my singular goal. There were very few other goals. Um, and so many times I ran into conflicts with humans who did not have the same um, identical ambition or goal within that field. So this came to it often stood out when it was around my own project. Yeah, so building my own company. And obviously this was my baby, or is my baby. And very much in the early days, I had a hard time understanding fully how a lot of the people I worked with were, yes, extremely ambitious and extremely hungry and all that, all that. But sometimes, of course, they weren't as hungry as I was. So,
Of course.
for me, working 4 a.m. in the morning, I mean, we had some days. I remember once where I sat with some incredible engineers, and I think it was probably 4:30 in the morning. We'd been working all day, and I tell them, guys, I'm just gonna have a little nap here. Uh, and 3 hours later, I woke up and we were all just laying there on the floor. So that was kind of the mindset I was in, and a mindset I was in, and I had a very hard time working together with people who weren't in that mindset. And sometimes that both that was it was just wrong, and long term as well as short term, it was not the right approach to have. Um, Very often it created more damage than benefit. Um,
Mm,
I think when I was younger, I thought that was something that was needed. Today I realize it's not. People have different priorities and different things that are important for them, and we work extremely hard and we sacrifice a lot when we need to, but we don't always need to. Um,
yeah.
and as long as we're achieving the goal, then there should also be a little bit of flexibility on both sides. So I think that's one of the things I would have loved um, to have ingrained in my mind earlier. I think I worked with a lot of incredible people, and some of those people, the ending was not as good as I would like it to be. Some of those people
Mm,
I cared deeply about, but today probably they wouldn't think that I cared about them based on the friction that happened at the end of their time working with me, which is a little bit sad. But we live and we learn and we improve and all that stuff. So,
yeah.
cool.
Awesome.
I think that's a big
Cool.
one. Yeah, there's probably lots more, but
Okay. Yes, of course. No, but that's a very, very, very powerful one, and important one. I could see you. I
Right,
I could see that persona.
right.
Like I've seen that persona before, especially
Yeah,
like it's going to sound weird, but yeah, especially in like young men, like under 30, you're
right,
like, oh, they have that thingy.
right.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can picture that.
Sure, sure.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Okay, and I think like we're getting towards the end of the session. It's been super amazing. But before we wrap up,
sure.
I would love to know what's been kind of the biggest challenge that has shaped you in these past years.
Right. What's been the biggest challenge? There's been a lot of challenges. Um, I think my journey has been an interesting journey. I think I went from flying high in the sky with just always succeeding professionally, to then suddenly, when you build a company, or companies, um, the reality is you're just gonna meet a lot of walls where you just can't always succeed, and sometimes you can get over those walls or over those hurdles, and sometimes you just got to pivot, and go around it, or go somewhere else, right, and accept that wall you're not going to get past. And I think that's been a humbling experience.
Mm,
Um, I've also realized throughout that you um, how do I articulate this correctly? You have the ability to move forward, yeah, if you just step back and figure things out. Things, pain
yeah.
will come short term, but you can move forward. So some examples will be in my current company. We've had two situations where we could not pay salaries. Yeah.
Wow.
Today, I mean, we're flying high and succeeding drastically, and all that stuff, and things are going amazing, right? One of the reasons I'm in Europe, expanding our business here. But we had two separate periods where we couldn't pay salaries. One of the periods was over, I believe, it was over 6 weeks, over 1.5 months, where the staff did not get any paycheck, and there was no light at the end of the tunnel of a paycheck on the way. Um, at the
Wow.
time, our team was relatively international, so I think we had people from a bunch of different Western countries, but also Central Asia and East Asia countries. So everything from like yeah to I mean places where people are not blessed with the same security
Mm,
as you would be in let's say Western Northern Europe. Um, yeah, so people whose lives heavily depended on this paycheck, and if they did not receive it, would have to go back to their own countries and debt and all kinds of painful things. And these situations, those were it's probably why I have so many gray hairs on my head as a 31-year-old. Yeah, but these kind of situations, I mean, they those were some of the ones that just taught me a lot. Hard work, biting through the pain, having a cool head, just really problem solving and figuring out how do we do this, and then really just playing with open cards with amazing people around you, and explaining them the situation, and then allowing them to choose whether or not to proceed, or call it a stop. So I think had I given up in those instances, as I think probably a lot of people would, then yeah,
mm-hmm,
I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in today. Yeah, is this going to be the last rocky road? No, probably not.
mm-mm,
Um, but it was painful at the time. Looking back at it, it's a blessing, right? Um,
yeah. Why didn't you give up?
well, I mean, I think there was just I believed I believed that the business was valid. Yeah, I believe that what we were doing, there was a need for. I believe that if we had more money, so if someone had given us $1 million at the time, then this business would be moving forward. We purely needed to figure certain things out, and cash in the bank, which is what it costs to pay people's salaries and expenses and all those other things, just weren't really there. I believe that we could find people with money at the time, and explain them about this journey, and about this future, and that there would be some of them, some of the people we would meet, that would say, hey, I also believe that this would be a huge opportunity, and I would love to put some money in to have a piece of the pie. I believe that was possible. I also believed it would be possible to keep the team members on board
Mm.
because they also believed in it long term. I think most of the people that I've worked with during my own my own ventures, um, all of those humans have always had the ability to get better paid jobs. Always. We've been extremely selective in how we've hired throughout the years. I think I mean we've had interns from like Cambridge University. We had a guy who was studying rocket science, who was the only person
Wow.
yeah, was the only person at Cambridge to get basically a scholarship to go to the US on an exchange program 1 year. They send one student a year. And this guy came back for two internships, came back a second time and brought his girlfriend along the second time. So most people that we've worked with in this journey have always had better paid opportunities, but have come for some other reason. Some of them it's been a percentage because they wanted to work abroad, and others it's been because they wanted to work with us, and others because it's been exciting projects, and. Um, so yeah, I believe that it would make sense to continue. The alternative was not attractive for me, which would be go get a job at that time.
Mm.
Um, and then a lot of people relied on us. A lot of people relied on me, and a lot of people relied on my business partner. And I was not going to let them down. Simple as that. Um, yeah,
Awesome. I love it.
sure.
Yeah, I'm like, it's so interesting.
Right.
And then, like, if I make it a little bit more personal,
Mhm.
uh, like, yes, you're super young, but you are about to become a dad. Like, you'll be a father
I
very
am,
soon.
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congrats. Like,
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, haven't
yeah.
worked out in a way.
Yes. Have you given any thought on how becoming a father will change your views on how you work, the hours that you work, even like women in your team,
Right,
all of that?
right. It has. Um, First of all, it's given me perspective. Um, Prior to having a pregnant wife, I, in general, I think I do not work long hours compared to what I used to, but I do think I work long hours compared to what normal people define as long hours. Yeah. So I think a normal human being would not be happy with the working the amount that I do, unless they were deeply passionate about it. And so um, the perspective I've received of having a pregnant wife is obviously that this is not sustainable with a child. Even though it's much
Good for
less,
you.
it's right. It's simply just not. If you want to have a life with both, I guess at the office, um, then at home with your child and your partner, and then also separately at home alone with your partner, because you also do need that alone time. Um, that will be a hard um, thing to achieve with the amount of hours that I currently work. So
Mm.
that also means that if I wish to retain people in my organization that have similar ambitions of having kids, which I know, some of my current colleagues do and so on, I mean, there just has to be a flexibility around, how they adjust their schedule, right? That's both working less, that's also working on different times and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's been a really big opener for me. I also think it's given me perspective in what's important in my life. I think one of the things that I loved about being a younger person was um, I had very little responsibility. Right. So
Mm.
remembering, back in my teenage years and whatnot, or even kind of early 20s, I was very much in a rush to get to the next step, do the next thing, and so forth. And looking back at it now, and so having said that, I started a company at a very early age, and that's just a lot of responsibility. When the baby cries, I mean, you stand up when there's a problem with the company. It doesn't really matter if you're at a dinner on a Friday evening. You just leave the dinner, unless you want to have your company, aka your baby, die, right? The baby's
Yeah,
crying,
yeah,
you,
yeah,
you give it attention. And so that was just a lot of responsibility, and I think one of the things I would love to do differently if I could was I would love to just slow down a little bit back then. Specifically, probably take a year, go travel, something like that, right? And life is life, and I got other benefits by not doing that, and so that's absolutely amazing. But I think having a pregnant wife has reminded me of that, and that also
mm,
gives me the perspective that I would love to avoid um, losing the early years with my child. Right.
yeah.
So if you think about how much time, let's say with you and your parents, if you think about how much time you spent with your parents throughout the years, you could probably attribute that 90% of the time of your parents and your time spent together was spent while you were still living at home, right? After you left home, probably only 10% of the time you guys had together has happened and will happen until they pass, right? And so if you think about it like that, you got to flip it around and say, okay, you as a child, do you remember when you were 3? Do you remember when you were 4? Do you remember when you were 6, 8, 10? Probably not, right? Even as a 14-year-old, you
Mm.
probably only remember 2% of the memories with your parents, something like that. But for your parents, I promise you it's not like that.
No,
They
they
remember
remember the
they remember everything,
moment, everything,
right?
everything.
And so that, if you consider that 90% of the time that you're going to have with your child is in the first X years, right, until they leave the nest. You better also, if you have a head on right, and you want to value, if you value that time, you better also optimize your life accordingly, right? And so I'm just very conscious of that, and I don't want to lose out on these next years. I of course also, I'm still going to achieve all the professional things I would like to achieve. But of course, different strategies and frameworks have to be applied for how I approach this. Um, yeah,
Amazing. Now you sound wiser, even
right.
even wiser than like 6 months ago when you left
Yeah,
KL.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, you do sound like a mature, changed man.
There we go. Sure,
That's
sure.
cool. That
I'm
is cool. That is
I'm still
cool.
a child inside. Don't worry.
That's good. That's good. I think it's good to keep the inner child alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. My niece was
Awesome.
telling me, so one of the beautiful things about being back home in Denmark is, obviously I've been gone for many years, so I haven't had a lot of time with my sister's children. And I was in the car a couple of weeks ago with my niece and nephew. She's 8, he's 10. And they're kind of excited that I'm having a girl and all that. And I asked them, so what do you think about me being a dad? And they say, we think you're going to be a fun dad. And I'm like, what? Okay, why
Oh.
yeah, why am I going to be fun? And um and and she says, because you always buy ice cream. Right? The brain of an 8-year-old. But my nephew, who's turning 11, he says, Jonas, you're always laughing. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, you're always laughing.
right. I mean, obviously, the professional Jonas is very different than the personal Jonas, right?
Of
But
course.
I deeply hope that I will keep laughing together with my own child. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm.
That is like so beautiful. I was about to ask what's next, blah 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 blah, but I think what you just said, it's just like absolutely beautiful. What's next? Just like continue laughing with my child.
Right. Right.
I'm like all the love and blessings towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely awesome. Cool.
Cool.
Well, it's been an amazing chat. I think I could go on and on and on and on. Yeah, it's been lovely having you in the show.
Mm. Lovely
Just
being on
as
the
a
show.
final, thank you. As a final kind of remark, catch up. Um, What piece of advice would you give to someone who's in a job currently and who's considering getting started?
Who's considering to start their own?
Yeah.
Right. I think it depends very much what they're considering to start and why. I think there's two different types of businesses. You can start a very quick cash flow business, which, if you execute it correctly, very quickly can bring you the lifestyle that you want. So let's say it could be opening a restaurant. You could very quickly go from, let's say you work in a restaurant, you're a head chef, or you're a manager. If you get the right people on board, and the funding and all that stuff, you can very quickly, within 4 months, live the same lifestyle, at least financially, as you were, in the job. So very, very little risk and so forth. If you're building something that might require more years before you achieve, financial security, and maybe also time wise, balance, and all that, then I think, there's a different mindset to have, and you really got to ask yourself a lot of different questions. The most important is why do I want to do this? Yeah. And does that benefit really outweigh the cost?
Hmm.
Right.
That's a great
Um,
question.
yeah. Um, and sometimes the cost is deeper and sometimes it's not, but it's really important to understand, why am I doing this, and is it worth it? In other words, yeah, and from there, there will be a million more. If you're
Yeah.
listening to this, and you really are considering starting your own company, or going on your own venture, do feel free to reach out. I'll always, jump on a call or reply emails, and help you where I can. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much. Where
cool.
can people find you?
Um, oof. I think email would be best. I do have a LinkedIn, but I have 50,000 people on there, and I get 100 spam messages a day of people trying to
Oh,
sell me things.
oh,
But good, yeah, give me a shout on. You can try LinkedIn, Jonas Chelbat, so Jonas, Chelbat. Otherwise, you can catch me on my email, which is my first name dot my last name at gmail.com.
oh, that's easy.
Very easy.
Amazing.
Cool.
Cool.
All
Well,
right.
it's been super amazing talking with you.
Yeah.
Sending you a huge hug to you and your wife all
Thank
the
you.
way to Denmark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Have an amazing rest of your day. And for our listeners, hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And I'm assuming Jonas did as well because we were
Okay.
both like so into the conversation. Sending you a huge, huge hug and tons of love all the way from Malaysia through all of Asia, all the way to Europe, crossing the ocean to Latin America, and covering back to Africa.
Cool.
So tons of happy vibes for everyone, and I'll speak with you soon next week. Thank you guys. Bye
Bye,
bye.
Monica. Bye, everyone.
Bye.